Hi, everybody. This is Nate. Welcome to my channel. And Andre, welcome to join us in this uh, second week of February. Time is flying, obviously, as always. How are you, Andre?
I'm doing well. I mean, I'm waiting for spring. Winter is long, but I'm doing quite well. Other than that, like everyone, the situation in the U.S. is
Heavy.
is heavy. So there's that. But other than that, I'm thankful to be doing
Good, good.
reasonably well. Yes.
Before we get to talking about what's happening, I wanted to mention for the viewers that the second episode of Third Wish magazine is available. There's a digital and there's the paper version, and I'll be happy to get you one, Andre.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you.
before we get started, I thought maybe that's a good idea to talk with you about current energies, which I expect it's mostly what's going on with the eclipse and then kind of what is it impacting. So maybe if you want to share a little bit your thoughts on that.
Yeah, we're in the eclipse zone. That is coming up very soon by the I would say Sunday. The moon enters the sign of the eclipse, and then 17th is the peak. So we're in the zone, and that has been a huge problem for the president here because of where the eclipse is in his own particular chart. And that encompasses the literally the months leading into it and the months on the other side, with this place being the peak. But being a moment of energy, or some people can call it lack of energy because something is being eclipsed. And the way he tends to do this thing where when he feels, diminished, compressed, I mean, he's not doing well. The latest poll has him in the 30s. Every time they do a poll, you see a decline. And he knows this, even though he always tells his followers, "Oh, my polls, I'm 70% approval." He just makes up stuff up, but he knows very well. So then there's the risk of that he might do something, to start a fire somewhere else. That's his favorite technique to push against the bad news that he's running into.
Yeah.
My sense is it's not going to work, and so even if he does, if you see him do something crazy in the next week or two, relax, wait it out. Because the other thing that's happening, probably even more important, is we're a day away now from Saturn is finally leaving Pisces, entering Aries, and it's going to be in Aries until 2028. And the zone that Saturn covers in 26 and 27 and into 28, like basically the remainder of his presidency, it's not good. It's not good for him because it starts to stop him, to show him the stop sign. And so, even though you won't see this right away, because the degrees are a little bit later, I've said this many times in my videos, as we move towards spring, you see more and more of this effect. And the way you can understand Saturn is, for example, you look at another person who ran into a Saturn tornado, is Christine Ohm. And of
Mhm.
course, it's because of what she was doing, admittedly. But when you see a person not looking good, looking like they're besieged, people calling for their head, you usually see Saturn in the building, much like you see Saturn around when a criminal hears the knock on the door and the police says, "No, we got this DNA thing that we've been looking
Mhm.
into, and you came up, so let's talk." you know? And same idea. And this is, in large measure, I think, because even though people many times complain about the media in the U.S. is very robust. They're constantly coming up with things, and of course, this administration helps them a lot in that the way they manage, they're always stabbing each other, so there'll be a lot of leaks. And so even if they want to keep something quiet, somebody will tell on someone, and then it shows up in the press. So and then also, I mean, the incredible volume of videos showing people doing things like Kristi Noem was saying, "Oh, this woman is a domestic terrorist," but the evidence didn't say that,
Out there,
and
no.
then it keeps being recycled, and it eventually becomes a problem. And if you say, "Well, no, no, it doesn't matter," then why are they now saying we're pulling back from the surge in Minnesota?
Yeah,
That's the latest news out of there. So
yeah,
maybe Trump goes to another city to do the same thing. But this one didn't work too well. This one created problems
a lot.
because when you start seeing, the bro leader, uh, you know, um, people like podcasters, Joe Rogan, who, he's not the brightest bulb. I mean, the guy, he's a podcaster, but he's human enough to realize this isn't working very well. It offends him. And so when he's talking and he's saying, wait a second, I think these people are lying to us. See, that becomes a big problem because
Yeah,
that whole crew is very conspiratorial. If the
it
top
is.
guy on the mic is saying, I think they're lying, conspiracy antenna, right? Now you've got people that follow. Maybe not all, but
Enough.
percentages, which is the whole
Mhm.
idea, which then, but this to me leaves it hanging around. You and I were talking about this, how really his only way to do it now is he has to figure out how to rig the elections somehow. He has to do that because via policy, even if he tried to do it differently now, I think it would be too late. And he probably won't because he's not capable of thinking, maybe I got this wrong and I can do it in a totally different way. No, he's dead set on, we're going to get rid of as many immigrants as possible. The latest thing that also has come out is now the press is putting more attention on those detention centers, which
Yes,
apparently are filled with people and they're treating them like animals. It's apparently the conditions are awful.
yes.
American citizens, they don't like seeing that. It's not a good look. So that's where we are.
Yeah. And I felt like you're absolutely right with the election. I feel though, as much as he wants to derail the election and cheat, I feel like A, it's not going to be as easy, and B, the the wave, the energy will be such that even with an element of cheating, it's still too strong for him to resist it. One thing that I do see, I feel like he will use eyes as a tool around voting centers to intimidate people. And that I feel like, this is something that I've seen it in my readings, but I've seen articles that there's thoughts of using ICE, but at the same time, I'm not. I don't believe that they will stop people from voting, and there are just not enough of them to create such an impact all across the country. Um, I think we wanted to talk a little bit. Maybe we can continue on this topic with the elections and the midterms. Um, I've always felt like the House will be blue, but the Senate, I think there's still a few questions, and we were talking about a few candidates that might be interesting to kind of pull some cards or
Hmm.
see kind of their energies. So because it was announced 3 days ago, it was announced that Susan Collins is trying to get her seat back or running for re-election. In Maine, that's not necessarily a seat that's going to be easy because Maine is predominantly Democratic. So I know that you briefly look at her chart, but I'm going to pull some cards just to get a sense. I've never done it before, and then see what you feel because the Senate is, I mean, down to a few seats. Like it's going to be down
Hmm.
to a couple seats. So that's important to look at. So Susan Collins in Maine, how does her re-election look like? Susan Collins in Maine. I got the Queen of Swords. I mean, I certainly will. do her best to win this election. Things are gonna go very, very fast, Eight of Wands. But look at the final card, Six of Sword, moving to a different place. So I feel like my reading is that she's gonna run a decent campaign, but the outcome doesn't look particularly positive. It almost feels like she's gonna have to pack her bags.
Well, that's interesting. And her in her chart, I don't have the birth time. I have the birthday, and it shows 27 and 28 are stressful years. And one way to interpret it would be that your job reflects the stress. And for example, one might say, well, that would be because they would lose the Senate and then she would be in a stressful situation. But particularly at her age, it could more likely be that she's just not doing the same job as she used to, and life is now forcing her to accept. It's Saturn again. Saturn is the planet. When it comes in and starts to square your planets, it says to you, the old way that you used to do those things, you can't do it anymore. And the most classic way would be that you're no longer there to carry out. So now you have to figure out how to live your life, and depending on the person's personality, some disappear into the background, some find other ways to be, politically active. But yeah, so I could totally see that. And the thing, by the way, about the Senate is that it used to be that they were saying the reason the Senate is difficult is because Democrats have to defend seats and take Republican seats away. Well, I don't think the defense part is that big a deal. They're going to defend them because right now the map is so hard for Republicans because of Trump's shenanigans. So I think it's more about, can you plug some away? And she would be one that if you take it, that's one seat, that moves
and
it.
maybe you need two or three. I haven't looked at the exact math, but it might be within a couple seats, I can pull some cards just for fun on the Senate. Will the Senate turn Democrat? This energy just kept moving, and that's what. Okay, Seven of Swords. I don't think it's gonna be easy. Like it's. Will the Senate turn Democrat? Three of Swords. That's not good either. 10 of Wands. So I've said no before, and I'm gonna keep saying no. I wish I had better news, but I haven't been able to get a yes yet on the Senate.
Well, maybe we need to wait, let things develop a little more, because the one thing in the astrological map is there is tremendous stress in the middle of this year. By the time deeper we get into the spring and through summer, and stress that implicates the Trump administration, my biggest concern is if, for example, because RFK is in the middle of this, and this guy is fast and loose with vaccines, and now he's talking about food, but you could get a major health problem there, for example, or something economic, some problem that engulfs the whole country,
Yes.
in a
Well,
problem.
or both.
So,
And I was getting this news. I look on my phone because I just took note of it, that missile cases, over 900 cases with infections in 24 states.
yeah,
And that's today. 900 cases, 24 states. This is serious enough.
oh, absolutely. Well, and then there's polio. Polio.
Yes.
I mean, it's remarkable that this guy, and even if you thought, the part for me that is hardest to swallow in his behavior is that even if maybe the risk isn't as great as people think, it's risky in that even small mistakes can be magnified and turned against you. And people hear, well, 900, that's not that many. Well, it isn't until it's in your neighborhood and maybe some action committee takes it up and then maybe it makes the news. But bottom line with him, he's got a problem there. The only thing I haven't been able to figure out is whether it's going to be some Epstein connected, or like not necessarily Epstein, but that zone, you know, type thing, because he's known to venture into that territory as well. He's not just bad at this job, he's got that problem. So that could be one thing. But it is a direct hit on his own health house, which could be his own health maybe. But when I
Or
see
health.
this with politicians, when you see the health sectors activated, it often is because they're in the health department or they're doing something which is what he runs. So if you see a hit there, it's a
That
problem.
could be both. Yes.
Yeah, like what happened. Trump had that during the pandemic. That's why the pandemic was so unlucky for him. The health part of the chart was getting
It
majorly
seems.
hit, and then it led to him catching the virus too. But it didn't. He was able to
Yeah.
survive it. Yeah.
You mentioned Epstein. It is fascinating to me how much of an impact it is making, particularly around the world. Um, and I see that in Europe in particular, like this is a bombshell, and European countries, the UK, are taking it like really, really seriously. There are investigations that are being brought up to, their each country's Department of Justice and Congress, and it is a big, big aspect. So, for example, in the UK, I mean, the Prime Minister and the King Charles are in the hot seat. This is not small. Like there's even potential for the monarchy to stumble. There's, it is. It is making issues overseas, and I get the sense that it could very well be that those investigations overseas that come back to the US with more information, and that would be very bad for Trump if some of his own actions have been discovered overseas and then come back to the, because in a lot of countries there are official investigations that have started, and they don't redact document. They actually go after the facts. There's no such thing as redaction of documents, which, by the way, um, the congressmen and women that went into the Department of Justice to read some of those, that was the goal, non-redacted files, which were promised to
Hmm.
be. Some of them were still redacted
Oh, for
when it
sure.
was
Yeah.
promised that they wouldn't be.
Yeah. No, I mean they're trying to skate through, and on what you said about foreign countries. So the international zone in his chart, that's the same zone where you find the legal profession writ large, as well as matters of immigration, obviously, because immigration is foreign affairs. But the idea of what you said, a foreign country coming up with something very damaging when you have energy in that house, which is what Saturn is going in there now. It's going to make its way in. That's a pretty easy call. You know that something is going to
Yeah.
come from there. So yes, 100%. That is very, very possible. Someone asked on my channel about, well, how do you assess whether the legal thing will catch up to him? Yeah, it's going to catch up to him in some measure. I mean, if you say enough to remove him, probably not, right? But enough to do damage and enough to tilt the scales and enough to make it an election loss, which can be enough. And remember, all of this. What's curious, I keep repeating this. All of it assumes, and I don't know how you feel about this, but because we haven't touched on his declining health and the fact that he seems more and more diminished. What has been your uh, sense when you do readings of how he does he get through? Does he get through this year? Still functioning?
Well, I feel like there's going to be an event with his health, like a surgery or something like this. I feel like I don't see how he could go through the year without an event. I feel like there's going to be some sort of event. I just don't. I have a hard time to say when. It's very likely it's before the midterms to me. Um, I feel like it could likely be around the summer. I just don't know why. I just feel that like it could be around the summer. Um, and I think kind of back to what you were saying, it might not be a particular element in the files that really kick him out of the Oval Office, but the pressure and constant pressure and all those problems and the fact that he can't control the narrative can have an effect on his health or him taking a crazy action. So let's, like you were saying, let's not forget the indirect impact of all these things.
Yeah, precisely, precisely, and the Epstein files, the I think the indirect damage is even more dangerous because when you have a flat economy for the majority of citizens, because the people at the top they're doing really well, but the
Yes.
people in the middle and below are not, and it's such a perfect theme to talk to voters and say, well, everybody, you guys are not, he's not helping you. I mean, this is about these rich people who commit these crimes. And look, then they try to hide. They want to make sure that you don't know what it's about. And so then that tends to, you know, anger people and cause them
Yeah.
to vote against you. Yeah,
And
exactly.
constantly talking about the stock market, I think that's wrong because, I mean, like for a lot of people, they don't care about the stock market. They care about next paycheck and the ability to feed their kids and get some prescription glasses. So the fact that he keeps talking about the stock market, that sounds like someone who cares about the rich people, frankly.
Yeah, well, and by the way, that's how you know someone is under difficult planetary alignments when they're in talking in Congress and they're asked to look at the victims, and instead she says, "We should be talking about the stock market is at 50,000." You know that has to be that'll go in history. You know, we'll be reading it in history books for years and years to come. That a woman attorney general wouldn't look at women survivors, and instead that says to you, the stock market. You almost feel like she got the talking point from him. You know, because uh,
Oh yeah, but
she,
that came at the wrong time. It's almost like
no,
she didn't really time it properly. Yes.
yeah. So, but that's the point. The point is that planetary force being around is counseling you to be careful, stay contained. She just lashed out. That's because a different planetary force, by the way. That's the problem with astrology that you get things competing. So she's got Saturn and Uranus simultaneously, and the Uranus energy is, I'm not going to follow any rules. I'm just going to say what I feel. And Saturn is saying, not a good idea. You should.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So,
But yeah, she's definitely in the hot seat. Noam is in the hot seat. And the other ones, I felt that, for example, Kash Patel, I predicted that he would try to go this time under the radar and not show himself. And I think that's exactly what he's doing. He's been hiding behind his desk. And I think it's the best strategy for him because anytime he's opened his mouth, there's a problem. But I mean, it's still going to bring issues. Um, and the other one that we've talked about is Exeth. I feel that also there's going to be problems with him. Those would be some of the four. We've been talking of movement in and out of the cabinet. I think we're going to reach that point where there's going to be departures before the midterms. Yes.
Kash Patel, he's another one that the uh, the the day chart is known, not the birth time. But so then what happens is he has his moon in Cancer no matter what, between 2 degrees, 2.5 degrees, and 15 degrees. So this chart I'm going to watch because when he's going to get in trouble when the Saturn finds that moon, and Saturn will go starts tomorrow, and it'll inch its way to the end of that 15 degrees in July. Boom, it parks there. So the later he's born, the more it goes to the higher degrees. The earlier degrees. But as soon as I see him in the news, in controversy, that'll tell me where the moon probably is. But either
Yeah.
way, he's
First
not
in
escaping
Kenya.
though. He's not escaping. This guy is one of those people. So many of these people in the cabinet have these vulnerabilities in 2026 at the worst possible time. And by the way, Hegseth, he's in it for sure. He's got same problem. They like going from one thing to another. He's still, they're doing this thing. I don't know if you saw this, that the grand jury said, we're not going to do this Mark Kelly thing. This is BS. They tried
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
but he said that they're going to appeal immediately. They're going to keep going, to which I think is a total waste of time. But that's what he's doing. So, yeah.
Another side note, unrelated, but I know we've talked about this topic a couple times. The delay in the Supreme Court to release the decision on the tariffs. It,
Yeah,
it, it
they're
was
definitely.
supposed to be a quick decision, and I've noticed that it keeps on being delayed, which tells me, and I've always felt this way, that they're not coming to a clear-cut agreement, and it's going to be some sort of a mix. I've always felt that. I might be wrong, but the more it's delayed, the more I feel like there's going to be like multiple layers into this decision.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, the whole thing is for so many reasons a big problem for the economy and people's confidence. And so, and by the way, even if they said outright, you cannot do this, he has ways still of in the background
Yeah,
imposing. So his philosophy, he's just too much of a knucklehead
all
to
around it.
understand. Right. And so, then what ends up happening is countries like Canada all of a sudden is doing more business with China. And then you,
Yeah,
then you have Trump saying, oh, you guys, we're not going to, you have to pay us for that bridge. And look what's happening. Now China's going to take away your hockey and you won't be able to do the Stanley. I mean, it's like your crazy uncle, yelling at the internet. That's the president of the United States right now. Completely ineffective, doesn't do anything. And the allies make friends with somebody else. So he's
of
doing some
course.
really serious damage to the American system, because of the way
Well,
he's
I mean,
behaving.
the obvious one is with China because, I mean, its biggest, I feel a lot of his decisions are actually, if you can really look at them in the context of the competition with China, this is true for Venezuela, this is true for Iran, this is true with the tariff, this is true. A lot of that head to head with China is coming through. And look what's happening with Canada, look what's happening with Europe. Those continents or countries are shifting more towards China because of, I mean, just for example, what they saw with Greenland, I was like, oh, we might have to really rethink all this. So basically, at the end of the day, it has the opposite impact because it doesn't want Europe and Canada to shift more towards China. That's just not good, just purely from a commerce standpoint and from an isolation of the United States.
100%. Yeah, no, it's 100% true. And the problem with all this is that it's going to take a while to
Yeah.
recover and clean up and shift gears. And especially from the vantage point that if a country can elect someone like this twice, why, even if you have a normal person in 2028, countries would say, yeah, but how do we know that in 2032 you don't put in Donald Trump Jr. or Kash Patel for I mean, I'm exaggerating now because,
Oh
but
my God, Kash Patel for president. That's like a nightmare.
well, he would be watching over us. He would be,
I
you
know,
know,
I know. Um, the I was about to, well, also kind of going with that. Fascinating to see the job reports, which constantly now are in this pattern of coming out super strong, and then a month or two later, actually being a third or half of what they say it is. I mean, isn't that fascinating that they announce all of this and then, oh, well, that's just only a third of. I mean, those numbers make no sense anymore. This is all managed communication that is actually messy because technically, if this job number was truly that good. The response from the Fed would be to raise the rates, and he wants them to drop them. So it's a complete flop.
100%, 100%. I mean, this is where you see that the man is wired to traffic in lies. He's constantly deceiving, and if he doesn't like a message, he wants to bury it. And my hope, and of course, you have to, this is a hard thing to study because planets that have big cycles, you don't get a chance to study them as much as faster moving
Yeah.
orbits. But Neptune has been in Pisces since 2011, and you can correlate that period as the beginning of this culture of anything goes and truth is the same as lying. And it really accelerated during the middle part of that. Trump comes in and so forth. Well, now it's left, it's gone to the next sign. And my sense is that lying is going to become unpopular. And this is going to be another big problem for him because he needs people to just accept BS, total BS, right? And this is another way for the Democrats to say, this is what's become of us that now you can't even get, he hides the statistics. He won't tell you the truth. He just keeps it to himself. So now we don't know what's happening. And then everybody's in danger as a result, right? We don't know whether the
Yeah,
vaccines are doing what they're supposed to do. We don't know about the economy. Why? Because these people hide it and they lie to you about it.
that's right. There's no
Yeah.
CDC data. There's no actual job data that is reliable. There's everything is covered up to manage the narrative. But at the end of the day, people, I mean, that's where it's really not smart. When he says like gas is $1.99 a gallon, he said that.
It's there.
Well,
And
everyday people know what they pay for gas. I mean, so there's limits to the lies because, you know, anyone who's has some sort of regular life tends to know about everyday things. And if someone doesn't know about everyday thing, it's certainly him.
for sure. And then the other problem you have is that in a capitalist society like the US, what'll happen is you do something and you might open a business opportunity for someone. There'll be statisticians out there thinking, we could start a company and start telling people the real numbers. And if that becomes popular and they start saying, look, that outfit has the real numbers, now you have this conflict and again can become a huge problem for him because you can't stop that. That's part of doing business. So it's incredibly complicated, but it all comes back to when I talk about, okay, someone is suffering, you do have to correlate it with the planets. But yeah, they're there. It's there. It's
Yeah.
totally there. The idea that you're being pushed back, and I mean, you tell me. We saw the latest numbers. They came out today. They're terrible. They're terrible numbers. People are disapproving. In fact, remember that thing we were discussing about how the numbers are so poor that there's a Senate race in Texas that it looks to be in danger for the Republican Party because the way the dynamics are in the primary, this guy Ken Paxton, who apparently is hated by everybody, he's very disliked. So then, if he somehow wins that primary, he would be running against the Democrat, and Texas would
Have
be. I often talk about the canary in the coal mine. If you lose anything in Texas, that's usually a terrible sign. That
what an
things
F.
are
We
going wrong.
discussed that earlier. For the Senate, every seat matters. Like it's down to one or two seats. Okay, let's just have a quick look at this guy, Ken Paxton. Will he
Well, or
win?
even do they seat because he might not win it might not be Ken Paxton that wins. So do the seat like can the
Okay.
Democrats steal a seat in Texas?
Do you know which state it is? Like which senator it
I
is?
think it's I'm pretty sure it's Cornyn. I think let me double check that right now.
Can Democrat win?
Yeah, yeah. John Cornyn's U.S. seat is on the ballot, uh, and and the race is competitive both in the primary and the general election. But the current thing around the primary is that I believe there are three. Here it mentions Paxton and Wesley Hunt, but it shows them essentially tied. I thought there was a third person. Well, the way the story I heard, it was presented as that the dynamics could push Paxton over the top, but that would be more of a problem for the Republican Party than a good thing, because then it increases the
So
chances that the
extreme.
Democrat wins. Yeah.
Well, in any case, I didn't really take him into consideration. I just asked the chances for the Democrat to get this Texas Senate seat. The cards are excellent. The Ace of Wands, new beginning and grabbing the power. The Four of Wands, that's actually the stability, the deal, that totally feels like a win. And then the Nine of Cups, the wish card.
Wow. There you go.
I mean,
So now we have to do this again in 2 or 3 months, and then maybe you'll
yeah,
get those
I
cards for
think
the
we're
full Senate.
well, yeah, I mean, it's like I get good cards for the individual race, and then I can't get good for the Senate. Go figure. But the energies are shifting, 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 and it's still a bit
Yeah, I
early.
mean, everyone wants to, not everyone, but there's a general dissatisfaction with Chuck Schumer as the
Mhm.
leader of the Senate. But I keep telling people Chuck Schumer's chart in 2026 is much better than it was in
Okay.
2024, which makes me suspicious that things could be good there, because the last time, I think it was a little stronger than this, but back in 2020 for sure, he had a really good situation and he was able to be, he won. The Senate was Democratic for a few years. Now it's not quite as good as that, but it's very
That's
good. It's a big improvement.
kind of taking it from there with Schumer and the Senate. We are actually about to get, that shutdown, like starting like anytime now. And that really made me think of this shutdown kind of starting during this eclipse time.
It could be, it could happen. I mean, the thing about the shutdown, what do you feel that they're going to shut down like in a big way or maybe in a small way? How would you read that one?
Well, I thought there would be a shutdown, but not as bad as the one in November. Like I don't see that lasting and lasting, but I feel like there will be. And trying to read the news today, it feels like we're getting towards a shutdown.
I mean, the problem they have here is that the last shutdown was because of the healthcare
Yeah.
issue, and that was polling very negatively for the Republicans. Even though the Democrats were doing it, the net result rebounded poorly to them. That whole group of people is now very angry because their health care is a lot more expensive.
Oh
This
my.
one, the issue is about ICE. ICE is very unpopular right now. So if the Democrats force a shutdown, the Republicans will say, "Oh, they're obstructionist and they're not letting us govern." Yeah, but look what they're doing it for. They're trying to stop you from spending money on killing U.S. citizens. So it's a good topic for Democrats,
Well,
to
plus
force the issue.
we're talking more money for ICE. It's not even like taking it down. It's about giving more.
More money.
Why would I mean, like frankly, tax our dollars are going to the $50,000 bonuses going to people signing up. And
Oh yeah, no,
that's really good. Like this is like a big money, and I'm sure I'm not saying everyone is necessarily a bad person, and people see that they can make money, and it helps them with their loans or family and whatnot. So I'm not really against the people, but the principle of ICE and the way that they operate, and they don't train. the people would join. It's they're left to their devices with guns and whatnot, and then tragedies happen. We know that it's not the last tragedy we got with the two we got in Minnesota. There's going to be more.
Yeah,
Sadly,
no, yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, this is the thing. You've got multiple points where their heedless way of governing could be the thing that makes the middle of 26. It could be that again, another crazy thing that they do around immigration. But the problem that Trump has is it's in the worst possible zone because it's exactly in that area where you get the scandal and then, you know, whether, because if you remember, I was saying international affairs and immigration are in the same house. So pick
yeah,
your poison. Does it come at you from the Epstein thing, or does it come at you from some other international problem, or is it because you yourself you keep touching the third rail on the immigration issue, and you're upsetting people as a result, right? So
yeah.
yeah,
You were mentioning international, maybe a word on Ukraine and Russia.
yeah. This is one where I remember talking about this years ago. So of course, when something is really far away, you have to wait, and particularly when you see that what you're what is being reported is really bad. And currently, the Ukraine war, all we hear is horrible things that Putin is doing. But Putin essentially has a very similar problem. In fact, worse than Trump in a way, because Putin has a cluster of planets getting hit in 2026 and 2027. I would be amazed if this guy is still the Russian leader either this year or next year. Very difficult for me to see how he survives this problem. The same problem is Netanyahu as well in Israel. And Israel, I believe, has an election this year. I'm nearly
Yeah,
sure. And my feeling is that it's not going to work out. It's going to be negative for him as well. You know? Yeah.
yeah. I mean, Netanyahu, the coalition at the Knesset was maybe one or two seats making the difference. He got
Mhm.
there just by one or two seats. And that includes like a big coalition where some of those people are extremely, on one side, and then you have some more moderates, and it's so hard to keep the coalition when you have extreme people and moderate people. Like he's trying to keep everyone happy. It's very hard to do. Let's just maybe pull a couple cards just to see
Mhm.
on Putin what are the energies around him right now. And then I'll do the same with Netanyahu. What are the energies on Putin right now? I'm getting like, well, that would be matching what you said. Like the first thing I'm getting energetically is overconfident. Like I think he's not realizing some of the issues and the shortfall. I got overconfident. That's the word that came. Putin, what's going on with him at the moment? Ah, interesting. Two of Swords at a crossroad. So he's hesitating which new direction to take because he doesn't know what to do. Interesting, you get the moon here. Yeah, I feel like that's interesting. The hangman, this is kind of the same card. He's stuck, and the only way to unstuck yourself from the hangman is to take a different perspective so that you move things forward. And then the Five of Pentacles, it's the card of loss and short money. It's an issue with the economy, but also money might be short with the war.
That's
So those
exactly.
are, yeah,
Yeah, that's probably. I mean, the bottom line to that war is that it's just cratering the Russian economy, and at some point you can't continue. And the Ukrainians, they're suffering, but they're not giving up. They're not giving up. They
they
just
won't.
refuse. They refuse to bend. And it's really really difficult. It's kind of amazing that governments still go in and try to conquer a country, it's really hard to take an army in, and even small countries will give you a terribly hard time. So,
Of course.
yeah, exactly.
Of course. Let's look at Netanyahu in the cards while we're at it. Let's see what's going on with him. The first energy I get is frustrated because he wants to control Trump a lot more and he's getting frustrated with Trump. Yeah, I know why. Because, well, the obvious, but Netanyahu wants Trump to act quickly in Iran and Trump is dragging his feet.
That's like controlling a dog with rabies. I'm sorry.
Okay, Netanyahu, what's going on with you right now, Netanyahu? Five of Wands, there's a lot of infighting. I believe this is in Israel, difference of opinions, trying to keep. Two of Wands is looking for a forward path. You know, it's trying to find a way forward. Queen of Cups, I don't know what would that be, but maybe there's a lot of emotional aspects. Four of Swords, like either health issues or is stopped. But
Like
I don't know why it resonated when I said that. I got a health issue.
a health issue. Is the Four of Swords, it has a bit about quality of retreat, right? Too, doesn't
In
it?
retreat, but it's usually about people that need rest because they're not well.
Because they're not
Is
well.
there anything? I don't know. I don't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no,
Is the chart?
absolutely.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the call on Putin and Netanyahu is Saturn, the Saturn cycle, becoming Saturn. The older you are, one of the ways for sure it shows up is through health breakdown. You know, it's the force of time and the declining of your structures. And so, yes, it can definitely be that, 100%. That's true. It could be that. If you got that as an intuitive hit, yes, absolutely. Although, I think given the political situation he's in, as you said, the tight margin that he has, and then facing the voters, I think is pretty risky. You know, and no, it's not a winning situation. Yeah.
No. It feels like time has passed. Um, yeah, both of them are in the. I mean, all three of them are in the hot seat right now.
Yeah, yeah, that's 100% true. 100% true. And uh, even though the news, if you just listen to the fact that Putin is constantly throwing missiles and drones and killing people in Ukraine, it appears that they're winning the war, but really they're just destroying things, devastating the environment, but not really making any significant gains.
Yeah. I was trying to kind of pull cards in this situation. What, with those three guys, kind of struggling, what can we expect? The High Priestess, a lot of behind the scenes stuff, but also interestingly, the Wheel of Fortune. Like it's a cycle, and it's a whole new cycle because all three of them will disappear sometime in the next couple of years. It's a given.
Yeah, no, and the thing that just came to mind too is that the work of my namesake, this French guy André Barbeau, he had figured out, and it's pretty good because you can see it in history. Russia vibrates strongly to the Saturn-Neptune conjunctions that happen every 36 years. So the one in 1917 or 18, that was the revolution. Then on the next conjunction, Stalin died, and the country did a major shift. And on the one after that, the wall fell in the late 80s, 89, there was a conjunction. There was a major realignment, and now we're at another point. And the problem this guy has is that if you've got realignment energies and you're killing your own economy, it's not good. It's not good. That's what happened by the way, in 89. It collapsed because of an economic
Yeah.
downturn because they didn't have enough money to compete anymore, so they had to switch gears. And now, where does he get the money? He's spending it all on weapons, you know. So
Yeah.
I heard a really ironic comment that apparently the Ukrainian army, because of this horrific conflict, they've become really, really good at what they do. And so the comment was, when the war ends, they're going to be training the American army on how to use their, how to properly use the weapons.
Well, I
Yes.
mean, I'm sure that, I mean, there's so much learning that must have come through these 2, 3 years experience that
Mm-hmm.
sadly they learn. But at least they're gonna feel differently about protecting their own country for sure. Like they will take this to a whole different level. And it's gonna push a stronger integration with Europe. That I'm pretty sure of it. Like this is what's coming next. They will one day be part of the EU. They will.
Yeah, you know, Russia will have to adapt, and it's
Yeah.
just how it is.
The,
That's the way it goes. So, yeah, to me
yeah.
it makes perfect sense. It's just that I think what drives people crazy is that it's hard to be patient, you know, and let things unfold. They just takes time. We're in a zone too where the Uranus cycle. So Uranus was discovered in the 1780s, and that planet is so important in modern life because it connects to technology, which has now engulfed the world. So all the technology, the internet, the all of that,
AI. Yeah.
everything. So that planet, whenever it returns to its original place, every 85 years, every 84 years, you get a revolution, you get a change, and AI is part of it for sure. But that planet is not a planet that works well for fascists and emperors and kings. That
Uh,
planet inclines toward the idea of the individual and the group, democracy in some form, or a republic, you know, that respects those principles. So that's another good sign in terms of the cycles. But what is not easy is that, you know, the return happens, but it's, you know, it's a zone that encompasses years. So people often will say, well, yeah, but okay, fine, but when is this going to happen? I just say, look, step by step, we got an election coming up. Think about that first. That's the first logic. Then there's another election after that. Yes, we may get a unicorn descending from the sky that'll save us all, but don't assume that. Assume that you'll probably have to go through the steps to get to the other
exactly.
side. And when you get there, it's not utopia. It's not utopia. It's just better than what it is today.
I agree with you. I mean, like, I'm more laser focused on the midterms, and that's really the best way. When people say, when is this all gonna stop? Well, it starts with the midterm. Yeah, maybe something's gonna come before. We don't know. But if there's one thing we know for sure, we don't need astrology or cards, is that there's gonna be an election. And this is gonna determine what's gonna happen.
Right, and you're also you're in the. Linda and I have talked about this, and Linda is strongly believes that his efforts to
Oh
rig
yeah.
it will fail. I I feel the same way because of his chart. Right? Is that also your perspective as well? That he may try, but he won't be able to succeed.
From my opinion, absolutely. From my intuition, absolutely. Yes, of course, like he's gonna try to do more voter suppression, but that's not new. And also, I feel like another factor is there's a lot more scrutiny from what we've learned in the 2024 election with science and math and statistics and people that understand how to, look at results. And in other words, there's more scrutiny. And so because there's more scrutiny, they are not be able to do some of the things that might have happened in 24. And I know that because I work with elected officials and they are treating those elections differently. in the
Right.
way that they're like ensuring the accuracy of the vote. They are ahead. They're going ahead of the problem. So there's been learnings. There've been a number of things that have been put in place to ensure more transparency. So it's happening. It is happening.
Yeah, no, for sure, because that's where the U.S. it has the constitutional, the constitutional rules that the elections are conducted by the states, and he doesn't want that, obviously, because particularly which states, it's the ones that he knows he's going to lose, of course, right? Because he'll say, oh, they're in Philadelphia and in Detroit, there's cheating. Philadelphia and Detroit, first of all, cities tend to be blue, and also there are a lot of African Americans. I mean, he's such a racist. He's always doing this thing of, oh
Oh,
yeah, that's where the black guys are, and they keep voting against me. Of course they vote against you. Of course they don't like you. How can they possibly like you? It's true, but it's such a naked attempt. But as you say, I mean, if you think about it, those people that are in those places are going to be thinking, he's coming after us. So we got to lock the doors. We got to make sure that through legal means, through any means, prevent this thing from happening. Yeah. So
and
it
they're
makes
going
it
to be
harder and harder.
yeah, there are going to be more attorneys. They're going to be more watchers. There's going to be, I mean, this is going to be, there's going to be a lot of scrutiny, and they're not going to steal this election. That I don't see that.
What do you
No.
get for, maybe if we could do this as a final thought here, what do you get for, that thing they're trying to do? It's called the Save America. They want to pass a law, and they're even hinting that they would try to mess with the filibuster, because to pass a law right now, you need 60 votes in the Senate,
Yeah.
and you're never going to get 60 votes. But they can use some trickery, something about a talking filibuster. I don't totally understand the complete rules, but they're trying to jam it through to then have a law that they would enforce voter ID and things like that. What do
Yeah.
you get for that? What's your sense of where that might?
Well, my understanding and what I think is that I think to get those laws in place faster or with less resistance, you will have to use the filibuster or remove, or I don't really know which one it is, but basically, play with the filibuster. And it's a double-edged sword, and I don't see him able to I don't see that taking place. It's the same thing that with another way to get the budget passed would be also to do it this way. And that's what Trump wants. But it's a double-edged sword. And so I don't think it's gonna do that. I don't think this is gonna be able to get through.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. I mean, now he's so exposed because all pretty much all his initiatives are unpopular, and then he's left with another unpopular thing, and so a lot of eyes are going to be on him constantly. You're guaranteed any move he makes, statements he makes about the
Yeah.
voting, people will say, "Oh yeah, there he goes again." Of course, he's trying to
Yes.
cheat his way out of it. Yeah, exactly.
And then
Yeah,
look at, the whole gerrymandering, redistricting, and all of that. It was
yeah,
such a hot issue, and now,
yeah, yeah, exactly,
I
hundred
mean,
percent.
I think it is to me the way that I see him. It's almost like he's on a fishing expedition, trying to grab a fish here, grab a fish there, trying to find something so short-sighted that there's no long-term strategy, there's no thinking ahead. So he's just trying to grab whatever he can, and that's basically out of panic. And so, that's why I said double-edged sword, because those things can backfire. This is exactly what happened with the redistricting and the gerrymandering in Texas. Then look at what happened with California. So when you do something, there's a pushback, and so that also tells me that he is in a mode where there's no thinking, it's just immediate opportunity going, and that's basically how you make mistakes and get into places you don't want to be.
Yeah, yeah, I'm in full agreement. And the crazy part is that this guy, if he's plotting something, something will come to him where someone will say to him, "Oh, we could do this thing." It'll be 24 hours, and then the news will say, they're thinking this way, and then right away
Yeah.
you start getting the news cycle. That's the big problem in the U.S. is that the U.S. it's like you have a thousand million cameras and eyes are on you constantly if you're in the political
Yes,
arena. There's no escape.
he can't.
Yeah.
I know he can't keep his mouth shut, and even, I mean, he didn't need to. He revealed that he had an MRI. He didn't need to.
Well, he thinks that makes his case. It's like whenever he says that he's really healthy, he doesn't have dementia because he's passed many cognitive tests. That's
Of
funny.
course. And the next question is why they keep on giving him cognitive tests.
Of
That's the
course,
next
yeah, of course, of course, of
question.
course.
I
But
mean,
this is where Trump is all at once. He has to be pretty street savvy to have come this far. He's got that reptilian brain. He can manipulate the news and so on. But really, the overarching principle is he's a dimwit. This man is a dimwit. Overall, you know, he's just not very smart. That's the
he's
bottom line.
becoming, he's becoming the shadow of himself.
That's also true. Yeah, good point. Yeah.
I just feel. I mean, I know it's kind of a pain in the butt to do, and it's not pleasant. But if you force yourself to watch him 5 years ago, you see a completely different person.
True, true. That's true. Although, if you go back, let's say, because if you go back to say 2016, very different than today. That's 12, 10 or 12 years, right? 10 years. But if you go back 10 years before that, then he's completely different. He used to speak in complete sentences, and it's as though age has taken away his vocabulary, and his words
Yeah,
are more and more reduced. And I think I read somewhere that he's now talking at a grade 5 level or grade 3 level, very low in terms of communication. So none of that is good. That's the tell when a politician is losing his power, which, by the way, it is not afflicting Netanyahu that way. He is totally cogent for now, at
no, no.
least, right? There's no issue,
Neither
nor
Putin
has it affected. Bernie Sanders is older than Trump, and he looks totally
is
normal.
sharp
So,
or is
you know,
sharp.
yeah, age affects people in different ways. True.
Well, it might not be with, I mean, for Trump, it's not just age, it's nutrition and what he
Oh,
drinks. And, mm,
no, yeah, no kidding. Yeah,
I
he's got,
mean, yeah.
yeah, I
Okay.
know.
Well, Andre, I think it was kind of a fantastic overview of where we are. And in terms of kind of looking out in the future, what's after this eclipse, what's kind of the next big event that's coming up in astrology?
I think it's a moving zone that takes us into the mid-spring period where the pressures build, for these people that we think need to be replaced. But remember that it does come at a cost. This is
Yeah.
not just them. So I would be really amazed if all we saw was their declining fortunes, not at our expense. I think it's going to be at our expense in some measure, but you got to take that too. You got to be able to say it's just
Yeah.
part of the tough times that we're in, like we've had to endure. I mean, 2025 and up to now, look at the horrible things that we've had to see. So
Yeah, that makes a
that's
lot of
that's what
sense.
it is. Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
thank you, Andre, and we will do this again next month. Thank you for watching our show. We certainly hope that you enjoyed the conversation as well, and we'll see each other in about a month.
yeah. We'll see everyone soon. All right, that sounds good.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.